Welcome to You Can Data, where we will build the foundational knowledge required to succeed in today's data-driven business world. You don't need to be a data scientist to generate value for your organization, but you do need to be able to interpret data, use it to make better decisions, and communicate effectively with your teammates and customers. My goal is to create a comprehensive set of videos that business professionals can study to master the concepts, technologies, skills, and strategies necessary to succeed. The videos will be designed to be viewed in order, starting at the beginning, but also allow you to skip ahead to any of the topics that interest you most. With that said, let's get started. In our last video, we took a brief look at how data has evolved from clay tablets to the era of big data, empowered by the invention of computers and the internet. In today's video, we'll dive into 5 fascinating examples of businesses that made poor decisions because they either lacked access to the right data or the ability to use that data to their advantage. Before the relatively recent rise of computers and the internet, decision-making in business often relied on limited data, intuition, or gut feeling. And while instincts are valuable, they are no substitute for the powerful insights that modern data provides. Back in the day, companies didn't have access to the kind of information we take for granted now. Large-scale data collection, storage, and analysis were simply out of reach for most businesses. With no cloud computing, no databases, and no real-time analytics, even the most successful companies sometimes found themselves flying blind, making high-stakes decisions based on fragmented information. Fast forward to the digital revolution, and new technologies fundamentally changed how companies operate. Businesses can now collect vast amounts of data, analyze it instantly, and use it to forecast trends, optimize operations, and predict customer behavior. Leveraging data properly is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity for staying competitive. But when businesses fail to harness data effectively, that's when things can go badly. From iconic brands missing market shifts to industry leaders clinging to outdated models, history is full of stories that highlight what happens when data is ignored. Let's dive right in and explore 5 of these cautionary tales, and stick around until the end because we'll share key lessons you can apply to your own business decisions today. Ready? Let's go. Number 1. The Ford Edsel. Let me take you back to the 1950s, a time when the American automobile market was booming. Post-war prosperity meant families had more disposable income, and the demand for cars was growing. Ford saw this as the perfect opportunity to launch something big, a car that would revolutionize the market. Enter the Edsel, Ford's dream car, or so they thought. But instead of becoming a hit, the Edsel became one of the most infamous product failures in history. The project cost Ford $250 million, and by the time they pulled the plug in 1960, it had lost the company millions. So what went wrong?
Presenting the car that makes history by making sense, the 1959 Edsel.
The first mistake was Ford's failure to read the market. In 1955, when the project was conceived, the economy was thriving and medium-priced cars were in demand. Ford bet big on this trend, thinking the Edsel would fill that gap and attract young, middle-class families. But by the time the Edsel launched in 1958, the economic landscape had shifted. A recession was brewing, and consumers were now gravitating towards smaller, more affordable cars from competitors like Volkswagen and Chevrolet. Had Ford used better data, tracking changes in disposable income or forecasting economic downturns, they could have adjusted their strategy or pivoted towards a more affordable model. Today, tools like predictive analytics and market simulations could have provided Ford with the insights needed to react earlier. Ford's second mistake was setting the bar impossibly high. The company hyped the Edsel as a groundbreaking product, building excitement with months of aggressive marketing. When it was finally unveiled, customers expected a car that would revolutionize the industry. But the Edsel was, well, just another car. There was nothing particularly innovative about it, just an ordinary vehicle with a strange grille design that many consumers found downright ugly. Today, with the help of customer feedback tools, social media sentiment analysis, and focus groups, Ford could have managed expectations more carefully, gathering real-time insights about what customers wanted and tempering the marketing message accordingly. The final nail in the coffin? Poor quality. Ford spent too much time trying to make the Edsel psychologically appealing to its target audience, neglecting the technical aspects. Many of the early models were plagued by mechanical issues, unreliable brakes, jumpy acceleration, and misaligned parts that made for a frustrating driving experience. With today's manufacturing data and quality control tools, Ford could have identified these issues before the Edsel hit the market. Real-time monitoring, predictive maintenance, and automated testing could have ensured the product met the high standards customers expected. The story of the Ford Edsel is a cautionary tale about the importance of data in business. If Ford had better market insights, managed customer expectations properly, and ensured build quality, the Edsel might have been a very different story. Today, businesses have access to data tools that can predict trends, measure customer sentiment, and prevent manufacturing errors, luxuries Ford didn't have in the 1950s. So if there's one takeaway from the Edsel's failure, it's this: data matters. When companies ignore data or fail to leverage it properly, they open the door to costly mistakes. And when used right, data isn't just helpful, it's a game changer. Number 2. Xerox, when a copy company gets copied. For our second example of business decision-making in a time when data was less available, we'll explore the fascinating story of Xerox, one of the greatest business roller coasters in modern history. Xerox went from an unexpected market leader in the 1960s to a struggling company just a few years later. In this video, we'll break down Xerox's rise, fall, and recovery in 3 phases, and most importantly, where they lacked critical data to make better decisions. Our story begins in 1959 when Xerox introduced the world's first plain paper copier, the Xerox 914. At the time, copying documents wasn't widely popular. People associated it with stealing content, and it was expensive since earlier machines required special treated paper. Despite these challenges, the Xerox 914 became a massive hit. The company's founders were so unsure of its success that they advised family and friends not to invest. But just 6 years later, Xerox was generating over $500 million in revenue. With this newfound success, Xerox became one of the most influential companies of the 1960s. Confident in its market dominance, the company turned its focus to philanthropy. Xerox became the second largest donor to the University of Rochester and launched a $4 million ad campaign in support of the United Nations during a time of political controversy. But here's where the cracks began to form. Xerox had limited access to market data and lacked insight into competitors' strategies. As they focused on social initiatives, other companies were quietly catching up, developing cheaper and more efficient options. By 1965, Xerox was at the top of its game, but things quickly took a turn. The company's competitors, who now had access to similar technology, launched copycat products at lower prices. Xerox, however, failed to see this coming. They hadn't invested enough in tracking market trends or competitor behavior. Additionally, new investments in research and development were scattered and ineffective, leaving Xerox without innovative products to maintain its edge. Modern companies now leverage large-scale data like customer analytics and competitive intelligence tools to predict and stay ahead of trends. If Xerox had access to that kind of data back then, they could have identified market shifts early and adjusted their strategy. Instead, they were flying blind, relying on their early success to carry them forward. While Xerox struggled through this difficult period, it managed to survive, and that's a key takeaway. Xerox maintained its focus on photocopying technology. In 1969, a Xerox researcher actually invented laser printing, and in the 1990s, Xerox was a market leader in the shift to digital photocopying. As a result of Xerox's sustained success in innovation, Xerox is still a recognizable brand. but it never regained its once dominant position in the copier market. This story serves as a powerful reminder. In today's world, data is everything. Access to timely, accurate data enables businesses to spot trends, outmaneuver competitors, and make informed decisions. So what can we learn from Xerox? Whether it's tracking competitors, understanding customer needs, or predicting market changes, data is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. Businesses that don't adapt and rely on data-driven strategies risk riding on the same roller coaster that took Xerox for a ride in the mid-20th century. Number 3. A Kodak moment. Next, we'll take a look at Kodak, a company that once dominated photography, but crumbled when it failed to adapt to the digital revolution. Kodak's story offers valuable insights into how businesses can falter when they ignore critical data, and how the right data, if used effectively, could have saved the company. Founded in 1889, Kodak became a household name, revolutionizing the way people captured memories. For decades, Kodak owned the photography market thanks to its stronghold on film sales. But here's where things get interesting. Kodak engineers actually invented the first digital camera in 1975. That's right, decades before the digital revolution took off. But when consumers ultimately made the switch to digital cameras, Kodak was left behind by its competitors. So what went wrong? Despite pioneering digital photography, Kodak executives made a fateful decision. They suppressed the digital camera, fearing that it would cannibalize their highly profitable film business. Kodak believed that consumers would stick with film for longer, clinging to old data from their glory years and assuming past success would guarantee future dominance. But the key problem here wasn't just ignoring trends. It was that Kodak lacked both the quality and quantity of data to make an informed decision. Market research at the time was limited to surveys and sales trends, which gave Kodak a narrow view of consumer behavior. They underestimated just how quickly technology and customer preferences were shifting. Kodak also missed crucial data from competitors. Japanese companies like Canon and Sony were making rapid strides in digital photography. If Kodak had gathered deeper insights into these market developments, they could have adjusted their strategy before it was too late. But Kodak continued to invest in film, just as digital technology was becoming mainstream. Despite pioneering digital photography technology, when competitors released their digital cameras, Kodak was still caught off guard. By the early 2000s, digital cameras had taken over and smartphones were on the horizon. While Kodak scrambled to pivot, their late entry into the digital market was a losing battle, and in 2012, the once mighty Kodak filed for bankruptcy. Now imagine if Kodak had access to the kind of data we have today: real-time analytics, consumer behavior trends, and predictive modeling. They could have tested how quickly consumers were adopting digital technology, adjusted production plans accordingly, and even diversified into smartphones or cloud-based photo services. Kodak's story is a powerful reminder. Success in business today isn't just about having data, it's about using it properly. Companies need to analyze data continuously, monitor trends, and respond before it's too late. Kodak had the innovation, but without the right data and the will to act, they missed their moment. Number 4. Toys R Us.
I don't want to grow up fun. Toys R Us kid. They got a million toys at Toys R Us that I can play with.
Next, we're diving into the story of Toys R Us, a retail giant that dominated the toy industry, but couldn't keep up with the competition. Spoiler alert, it comes down to data, or rather, a lack of it. Toys R Us was once the go-to place for all things toys. If you were a kid in the 80s or 90s, this was the spot to shop. However, in the early 2000s, competition from Walmart and Target became fierce. These retailers expanded their toy departments and began undercutting Toys R Us on price, luring customers away. While Walmart and Target adjusted their pricing strategies quickly thanks to their sophisticated data systems, Toys R Us stuck to its existing model and ignored the warning signs. Ultimately, the company filed for bankruptcy in 2017, closing all of its stores in the US, UK, and Australia, with the last US stores closing in 2021. So what went wrong? The issue wasn't just competition, it was data. Toys R Us didn't have the tools to monitor pricing in real time. That meant they were slow to react to price cuts by Walmart and Target. Imagine walking into a Toys R Us store and seeing the same product for $5 or $10 more expensive than it was at a nearby Walmart. Guess where customers would go? Not Toys R Us. Without access to real-time pricing data, they lost their ability to compete effectively. On top of that, they weren't tracking changing consumer preferences and shopping behaviors that favored stores with lower prices and better online options. Now let's talk about how data could have saved Toys R Us. If they had used data-driven tools, they could have done a few critical things. Firstly, competitive pricing analysis. With tools like real-time price monitoring, Toys R Us could have immediately seen where Walmart and Target were cutting prices and matched them, preventing the loss of valuable customers. Secondly, consumer behavior insights. Using customer data, they could have tracked which toys were trending and adjusted their in-store and online assortments accordingly. And thirdly, inventory optimization. With predictive analytics, they could have managed inventory more efficiently, reducing excess stock and offering promotions and lower prices at the right time. Today, retailers use AI-powered analytics to make these decisions on the fly. Imagine if Toys R Us had access to these tools back in the day. They could have identified threats, adapted quickly, and even improved their store experience to better compete. Perhaps they could have identified the precise moment a particular consumer was most price sensitive and likely to switch to a lower-cost toy retailer, like Walmart or Target, and offered them targeted promotional offers to protect their market share. Unfortunately, by the time Toys R Us realized their mistake, it was too late. Now, their story is a powerful reminder. In today's retail world, data isn't just an asset, it's a necessity. Number 5. American Airlines. Lastly, let's take a look at the infamous rise and fall of Pan American World Airways, better known as Pan Am. Pan Am was a trailblazer. In the early and mid-1900s, they were the first to offer jumbo jets and computerized reservation systems. They even pioneered the global airline industry, becoming synonymous with luxury international travel. But then, in 1991, they went bankrupt. So what went wrong? The problem was that Pan Am overinvested in the wrong things. As competition from low-cost carriers increased and oil prices soared, travelers started shifting to cheaper domestic flights. But Pan Am doubled down on international routes and expensive jumbo jets. They missed a key shift in consumer behavior. And why did they miss it? You guessed it, poor data. Pan Am lacked access to the granular market data we take for granted today. Imagine if Pan Am had access to modern data analytics. Here's how things could have been different. Firstly, they could have used predictive market analysis. They could have identified the growing demand for short-haul flights and shifted resources to meet that need. Secondly, they could have leveraged competitive intelligence. Tracking emerging low-cost competitors like Southwest Airlines could have pushed them to rethink their expensive international strategy. And thirdly, fuel price forecasting, where predictive models could have warned Pan Am about rising fuel costs, prompting the airline to invest in smaller, fuel-efficient aircrafts instead of jumbo jets. Today's businesses can track almost everything in real time, from consumer behavior to market trends and operational costs. If Pan Am had access to the same tools, they might still be flying high today. The lesson here? Data isn't just for data scientists and analysts. It's the lifeblood of smart business decisions. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribed. Please leave your feedback, thoughts, ideas, opinions, and unfiltered adoration for my editing skills and smooth voice in the comment section below. In today's video, we discussed several different areas of business that could have benefited from better data and a clearer idea of how to leverage the available data to make better decisions. In our next video, we'll take a look at some of the common types of data and use cases for different divisions of business, including sales, marketing, human resources, finance, and more. I hope to see you then.